Assalamu alaikum, students. We are going to do multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome. Okay, I have done with you thyroid. You also had an STD of thyroid, and Professor Tahir has done rest of the endocrines with you. I hope everything is clear. If there are any questions, I'm going to unmute you after a few minutes because this lecture is not very lengthy. I will unmute you and we'll have a discussion. Okay. So today we are going to do multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome. The name is quite self-explanatory. It means this syndrome occurs in multiple endocrine glands together and it is an inherited disorder. And abbreviation wise, we call it MEN. MEN means stands for multiple endocrine neoplasia. And then it is a syndrome in which multiple endocrine organs are involved. So why we call it a MEN syndrome? Because this syndrome is a group of inherited disorders which result in proliferative lesions, which can be hyperplasia of the endocrine gland, or adenomas can be present in the endocrine glands, or we can also see carcinoma. Okay, so multiple endocrine organs are involved at the same time. Endocrine tumors arising in MEN syndrome have distinct features. Means you have seen that there are endocrine neoplasms which I have dealt with you, like thyroid neoplasm. Some of them, like medullary carcinoma, can be a part of multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome, but other tumors like follicular carcinoma and papillary carcinoma thyroid and anaplastic carcinoma, they are not part of multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome. So what is a distinctive feature about these MEN syndrome are these tumors, they occur at a younger age as compared to the tumors which occurs at the sporadic tumors. Sporadic tumors means when there is no family history. So these tumors occur at a much older age as compared to the multiple endocrine neoplasia tumors which occurs at a much younger age. Number two, the tumors arise in multiple endocrine organs. These tumors can be seen together at the same time in multiple endocrine organs, so they can involve one organ, later on the other organ can be involved. And number three point is that instead of having a single focus in that organ, these tumors have multiple focal tumors in the same organ present at the same time. So like with medullary carcinoma of the thyroid, if it is a part of MEN syndrome, that you can see many foci of medullary carcinoma thyroid in the same thyroid organ instead of having one single focus which occurs without having MEN syndrome. Okay, these tumors are preceded by an asymptomatic stage of hyperplasia involving that organ. Like in MEN2 syndrome, hyperplasia of C cells of the epithelium is seen adjacent to medullary carcinoma of thyroid. So because I've told you that medullary carcinoma of thyroid arises from the follicular C cells, parafollicular C cells, and these cells hyperplasia can be seen in those tumors which are adjacent to medullary carcinoma, especially in MEN syndrome. Otherwise, C cell hyperplasia is not a precursor lesion for medullary carcinoma of the thyroid, but in cases of MEN syndrome, it is a asymptomatic stage of hyperplasia which is present along with medullary carcinoma of the thyroid, and it can be a precursor lesion for that medullary carcinoma as well. These MEN syndrome carcinomas, they are more aggressive and they recur with a higher frequency. So MEN syndrome is a multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome which can be seen in a younger people. Multiple endocrine organs neoplasia is present. Multiple endocrine organs are involved, and multifocal means that the single tumor is present in many foci in the same organ, and they are preceded by symptoms like hyperplasia involving that origin as well. These tumors are more aggressive and the recurrence rate is more than the usual recurrence rate of the endocrine neoplasia. Okay, I hope it is clear. So again, I'm going to say that it is an disorder which is an inherited disorder in which multiple endocrine organs are involved at the same time. Either they can be hyperplasia, they can be adenomas, or they can be carcinomas. So MEN is further divided into MEN1, MEN2. MEN1 is also called Wermer syndrome, and MEN2 is again divided into MEN2A and MEN2B and familial medullary thyroid carcinoma. So MEN1 is known as Wermer syndrome, and when Wermer syndrome is characterized by abnormalities involving the parathyroid gland, pancreas, and pituitary gland. Three P's are present. So if anybody asks you in the Viva question what is a MEN syndrome, you are going to say it is a multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome, also called Wermer syndrome, and in MEN1 you are going to have three P's: abnormalities in the pituitary gland, abnormalities in the parathyroid gland, and abnormalities in the pancreas, three Ps. So these can be tumors, these can be hyperplasia, or these can be adenomas. And now we have added 1G as well, because gastrinoma is also seen in MEN1 syndrome as well. Gastrinoma is a tumor which can be present in duodenum or pancreas, and which can lead to Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. We have already done that in your when I did your GIT with you. Next is the MEN2A. MEN2 is further classified. MEN2 is further classified into MEN2A or Sippel syndrome, or MEN2B. And number 3 is familial medullary thyroid cancer. They all come under the MEN syndrome or MEN2 syndrome. In MEN2A or Sippel syndrome, it is characterized by pheochromocytoma, that is in the adrenal medulla, medullary carcinoma of thyroid, and parathyroid hyperplasia. These can be present in Sippel syndrome. And in MEN2B, which is medullary carcinoma of thyroid with pheochromocytoma, and then patient can have neuromas or ganglioneuromas. So MEN2A and 2B are quite similar, but in MEN2A you are going to see parathyroid hyperplasia and pheochromocytoma along with medullary carcinoma. But in MEN2B, you see medullary carcinoma, pheochromocytoma, ganglioneuromas or neuromas, which can be present anywhere in the body. And in MEN2 syndrome, another tumor which we can see is familial medullary thyroid cancer, along with other tumors are not present in that individual. So familial medullary thyroid cancer is the third type which can be seen in MEN2 syndrome. Okay, I hope it is clear. MEN1 is Wermer syndrome, MEN2 is Sippel syndrome, and MEN2B is having medullary carcinoma of thyroid, pheochromocytoma, ganglioneuromas, and number 3 in this MEN2 is familial medullary thyroid cancers. I hope it is clear. So now we are going to see one by one what is multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome 1. It is characterized by abnormalities involving the parathyroid, pancreas, and pituitary. As I've told you, there are three Ps. Prevalence is 1 in 100,000 individuals, okay? So in multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome, which is MEN1, it is also called Wermer syndrome. As I've told you, three Ps, you have to remember three Ps. Like parathyroid lesions, pancreatic lesions, and pituitary lesions, three Ps. And number another thing which is included in this is 1G, that is gastrinoma. So in cases of MEN1 or Wermer syndrome, in the parathyroid, primary hyperparathyroidism is the most common symptom which is seen in MEN1, which is because of parathyroid hyperplasia or adenoma. So in MEN1, the patient can present with you with primary hyperthyroidism, which is the most common presenting feature, and this primary hyperparathyroidism can be because of hyperthyroid hyperplasia or adenoma. Okay. Next is the pancreas. The endocrine tumors of pancreas are aggressive. Multiple microadenomas can be seen, which can be scattered throughout the pancreas with 1 to 2 dominant lesions. Pancreatic polypeptide is the common secreted product which is present in these tumors. Zollinger-Ellison syndrome are associated with gastrinoma, and hypoglycemia is associated with insulinoma. So in what I've told you, in parathyroid, we see parathyroid hyperplasia or adenoma, and in pancreas, we can see multiple microadenomas or with 1 or 2 predominant lesions. These pancreatic tumors can be either producing, can be gastrinoma, which lead to Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, or they can be insulinoma, that is increased insulin production, which can lead to hypoglycemia. Then number 3 tumors which you can see in men, type 1 is prolactinoma, which is seen in the pituitary gland. It is the most important pituitary tumor in MEN1 syndrome. Some patients also develop acromegaly with somatotropin secreting tumors. Acromegaly is like increase in the one part of the body, like because of the increase in the growth hormone. And these patients can have prolactinemia because of the pituitary tumor, or they can have somatotropin secreted tumor, which can lead to acromegaly. Now, the spectrum of MEN1 syndrome has extended beyond 3Ps. We have added 1G as well. 1G is gastrinoma. Most common site of the gastrinoma is in the duodenum, then pancreas, and synchronous gastrinoma can be seen in pancreas and duodenum as well. Synchronous means that at the same time you see gastrinoma in the duodenum as well as in the pancreas. Okay. MEN1 is caused by germline mutation of MEN1 tumor. Gene which encodes a protein called menin is present in these individuals. So clinical manifestation of the MEN1 syndrome can be hypoglycemia because of increased tumor which is secreting increased insulin, insulinoma. Intractable peptic ulcers can be present because of the increased production of gastrin hormone from the gastrinoma. Nephrolithiasis because of hyperparathyroidism, which can lead to resorption of the bone and increased calcium level, leading to kidney stones. Symptoms of prolactin excess by the pituitary gland can be seen. So I hope MEN1 multiple endocrine neoplasia 1 is clear to you, which is also called Vermeer syndrome. And you see 3Ps, that is, you can see the lesions in parathyroid, which can be either hyperplasia of the parathyroid gland or adenoma of the parathyroid gland. Or you can see lesion in the pancreas. These pancreatic lesions can be microadenomas, which can be scattered throughout the pancreas, or they can be one or two dominant lesions with microadenomas. These pancreatic tumor can be gastrinomas, which secrete a pancreatic polypeptide, or leading to Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, or they can be insulinomas, which can lead to hypoglycemia. So parathyroid lesion are primary hyperthyroidism because of parathyroid hyperplasia or adenoma, and pancreatic tumors can be either gastrinoma or insulinoma. And in the pituitary, you can see prolactinoma, or a tumor which can produce somatotropin hormone leading to acromegaly. Now, in the spectrum of MEN1, gastrinoma is also added, and the clinical manifestation of these MEN1 syndrome are hypoglycemia, intractable peptic ulcers, nephrolithiasis, symptoms of prolactin excess by the pituitary tumor. Okay, so MEN1 is clear with 3Ps and 1G. Okay, so 3Ps I have already told you. What are they? Okay, next we'll go to Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. I have already done this with you in your gastrointestinal tract when we did GIT. I'm just going to have few lines about it. Zollinger-Ellison syndrome is caused by a non-beta gastrin secreting tumor of the pancreas that stimulate the secreting cells of the stomach to maximal activity with gastrointestinal mucosal ulceration. So peptic ulcers can be produced in Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, and these can be treated by giving proton pump inhibitors. Zollinger-Ellison syndrome may occur sporadically or is a part of autosomal dominant familial syndrome, which is multiple endocrine neoplasia type 1. So Zollinger-Ellison syndrome you can see without having MEN syndrome as well, but in MEN syndrome, because of the increased gastrin secretion, can be peptic ulcer because of increase in hydrochloric acid. The primary tumor is usually located in the duodenum or in the pancreas. Sometimes the lymph nodes also harbor neuroendocrine cells, and these gastrinomas can be present in the abdominal lymph nodes. But ectopic location of these tumors is also seen in the heart, in the ovary, in the gallbladder, in the liver and kidney. So, okay, now we have done MEN1 and I hope it is clear. And I've also explained you what is Zollinger-Ellison syndrome in few lines. Okay. Next is the multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome, MEN type 2. So multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome is of, I've told you of two types, MEN1 and MEN2. MEN2 is again divided into MEN2A, MEN2B, and familial medullary carcinoma, which is the third type in MEN2. Okay. MEN2A is also called Sippel syndrome. MEN2A is characterized by pheochromocytoma, medullary carcinoma of thyroid, and and parathyroid hyperplasia. Medullary carcinoma is seen in 100% of patients. They are multifocal, more aggressive, 40 to 50% have pheochromocytoma and arise in the extra-adrenal tissue. Parathyroid hyperplasia is seen in 10 to 20% with increased calcium level and increased kidney stone. Okay, so what I'm saying is that MEN2A or Sippel syndrome, it is characterized by pheochromocytoma, medullary carcinoma of the thyroid, and parathyroid hyperplasia. In MEN2A or Sippel syndrome, in all the patient medullary carcinoma is going to be present, that it is present in all 100% of cases who are suffering from MEN2A syndrome. And 40 to 50% of these people can also develop pheochromocytoma, which can be bilateral or can arise in the extra-adrenal tissue, okay? And then parathyroid hyperplasia is also seen in 10 to 20% of people who are suffering from MEN2A with increased serum calcium and increased kidney stone formation. So MEN2A will also present because of the nephrolithiasis. It can present by nephrolithiasis as well. MEN2A is caused by germline functional mutations of proto-oncogene on chromosome 10q11.2. So this is the germline mutation and the functional mutation of proto-oncogene chromosome 10q11.2, which can lead to MEN2A syndrome, which is also called Sippel syndrome. So I hope it is clear. In MEN2A, you have medullary carcinoma of the thyroid, pheochromocytoma, and hyperplasia of the parathyroid gland. Next is the MEN2B. MEN2B. In MEN2B, multiple endocrine neoplasia 2B syndrome, there is going to be pheochromocytoma addition, and there is medullary carcinoma of the thyroid, which is more aggressive than MEN2A, along with pheochromocytoma, and patient can also develop multiple neuromas or ganglioneuromas, which can be present either in skin, in oral mucosa, in eyes, in respiratory tract or gastrointestinal tract. Morphinoid features can be present in these individuals who are suffering from multiple endocrine neoplasia type 2B syndrome. The skeleton can be long and axial and with a hyperextensible joints. And in MEN2B, there is germline mutation leading to single amino acid. Red proto-oncogene is responsible, which is different from MEN2A mutations. So in MEN2B, medullary carcinoma of the thyroid can be present in these people, and this is a more aggressive tumor as compared to medullary carcinoma, which is seen in MEN2A. Pheochromocytoma is present, and they can also develop neuromas or ganglioneuromas, which can be present in the skin, in the oral cavity, in the eyes, in the respiratory tract, or anywhere in the GI tract. When you look at on the physical appearance of these people, they have morphinoid features, long axial skeleton, hyperextensible joints can be present in them, and there is germline mutation of single amino acid in the red proto-oncogene, which is responsible for MEN2A syndrome. Okay. So last is the familial medullary thyroid cancer. Familial medullary thyroid cancer is a variant of MEN2A MEN syndrome, which there is a strong predisposition of medullary thyroid cancer, but not the other manifestation of MEN2A are present or MEN2B are present. 20% these are familial, rest are sporadic. So familial thyroid cancer can appear as on its own in the MEN2A or syndrome, and where no other manifestation of MEN2A or MEN2B are present. So they are quite overlapping things which are present in MEN1 and MEN2A. In MEN1, as I've told you, there is 3 P's involved: hyperplasia of the parathyroid gland with pituitary adenomas and tumors in the pancreas. And also 1G is added, which is gastrinoma. And in MEN2A, there it is again MEN2A is MEN2 is again divided into Sippel syndrome and MEN2B medullary carcinoma of the thyroid and familial medullary thyroid cancer. Okay. 2A Sippel syndrome is characterized by again medullary carcinoma, pheochromocytoma, and parathyroid hyperplasia. You can see pituitary is not present in the MEN2A syndrome, okay? But while pituitary adenomas are present in MEN1A syndrome. And in MEN2B, again, pituitary is not involved. There is medullary carcinoma, thyroid, pheochromocytoma, and patient can develop neuromas or ganglioneuroma. So this is all about MEN syndrome, and you have already done each one of these tumors on their own, so I'm not going into the details. I've done medullary carcinoma with you. Now I'm going to unmute you. You can ask me question answers now. And if you don't want to ask question answers, we can do anything else. Okay, so आपने unmute करना है या उन्होंने खुद में unmute करना है? Excuse me, आपने unmute करना है? Okay, you are unmute, so you can ask your questions, girls and boys. Unmute खुद ही करेंगे ये? ये खुद करेंगे ना? Okay, so are you going to ask any questions? Students? Yes or no? I'm not seeing any response. So you want me to continue with something else, or you want me to ask questions about anything and then endocrine disorders or thyroid disorders? Oh, I guess you are not interested in asking questions. So I'm going to continue with I can revise the tumors of the thyroid with you if you want. Yes or no? कोई भी नहीं बोल रहा जी Okay, so I hope you are कोई बात नहीं मैं continue कर देती हूँ. So I hope you are ready to come back to college on 15th of September. We are looking forward, and I hope you had a good Eid. So if you want, I can revise the neoplasms of the thyroid. You can tell me which neoplasm you want me to revise in detail: papillary carcinoma, follicular carcinoma, medullary carcinoma, or anaplastic carcinoma. Anyone can tell me. Come on. Okay, so it's my choice. So I revised neoplasms of the thyroid. I can revise with you follicular carcinoma, and then I can revise papillary carcinoma. Is it okay? I'm not going to into the details of pathogenesis. We have already done. I'm going to more give emphasis on morphology of papillary carcinoma and follicular carcinoma. I was interested that we can do a question answer session, but if you are not prepared for that, it's up to you. In the next lecture, which is going to be Monday, inshallah, I'm going to do carcinoid tumor, which I left when we did tumors of the GIT. That is an unfinished business, which I'm going to do it on Monday, and we are looking forward that you are coming on in September 15th. So we can meet in person and we can deliver lectures the way we used to do it previously. Okay. So I hope you're also looking forward after such a long break. So I'll repeat papillary carcinoma of the thyroid. Papillary carcinoma of the thyroid is important from your exam point of view because it can come as your OSPE question. It can come as your question in SCQ question, and it is a Viva question as well. Okay. So papillary carcinoma of the thyroid is an excellent prognosis, as I've told you in the previous lecture as well. And it is the most common tumor of the thyroid gland. 85% of the primary thyroid malignancy are of papillary carcinoma type. Most commonly, papillary carcinoma of the thyroid is seen in the ages 25 to 50, especially in previously exposed people to ionizing radiation. You have, as I've told you in the previous lecture when I did pathogenesis, that because of the ionizing radiation, the accident which happened in Chernobyl, many children who were exposed to that ionizing radiation later developed papillary thyroid cancers in them. Okay, so ionizing radiation or radiation to the neck because of any other reason can lead to papillary carcinoma of the thyroid. If you want, I can do the pathogenesis, but you are not giving me any response, so I'm choosing on my own. On the morphology, on the gross morphology, the papillary carcinoma of the thyroid can be solitary tumor or can be multifocal. Most of the time they are solitary lesions. Some tumors are circumscribed and even have a capsule around them, while other tumors have infiltrative border and they invade or infiltrate the adjacent parenchyma and they have ill-defined margins. So on the gross appearance, when you see papillary carcinoma, either you can see a single focus of the tumor present within the gland. The gland, all of you know, has a meaty brown appearance because of the presence of colloid. You can see white foci present in between those brownish areas. This can be a single focus or they can be multiple foci. Okay. Sometimes these tumors, because when they become advanced, they can infiltrate or invade the adjacent parenchyma or other organs as well, which are present in the adjacent structure. Cut section of these tumors, they have papillary foci and they can have fibrosis, calcification, and cyst formation. Okay. On the cut section, when you do the cut section, they can have areas of fibrosis, calcification, or cyst formation can be seen in them. This is the gross appearance of the papillary carcinoma of the thyroid. As I've told you earlier, you can see this whitish area and rest of the gland you can see meaty appearance. There is a capsule as well, which is mostly going to be a false capsule. And here you can see extension beyond the capsule into the thyroid parenchyma. Okay. The microscopic features are very characteristic in papillary carcinoma of the thyroid, and I'm repeating it because it's your OSP slide as well. In the papillary carcinoma of the thyroid, you can have branching papillae having a fibrovascular stalk. I told you, you see papillae in the Graves' disease as well. But the papillae in Graves' disease, they do not have a stalk. They are called pseudopapillae. Why they are pseudo? Because they're excessive and there is going to be hyperplasia of the lining epithelium, which appears to be that lining epithelium is in the papillary form, but this is a multi-layering mostly of the of the lining epithelium rather than a papillae. That's why they are called pseudopapillae, because there is no fibrovascular core in between. But in papillary carcinoma of the thyroid, they are true papillae. They can be branching papillae, and they have a typical fibrovascular core which is present. These tumor cells can be multi-layered or they can be single-layered. The tumor cells or these epithelial cells, they range from uniform to well-differentiated cuboidal cells to large anaplastic cells which show considerable variation in cell size and shape and morphology. The characteristic feature of papillary carcinoma is the nuclei. The nuclei have finely dispersed chromatin, which gives rise to a clear or empty appearance, and these nuclei can be called having a ground glass appearance of nuclei or orphan any nuclei. Okay. So papillary carcinoma, I told you, have a follicular variant as well. But in follicular variant, you do not see papillae formation, but the nuclear characteristic make them call you give you the diagnosis of papillary carcinoma of follicular variant. Okay, I'm going to explain you later. The nuclei, they contain finely dispersed chromatin. They can be empty looking nuclei. They can be called optically clear or empty in appearance or ground glass appearance or orphan any nuclei. Okay. Invagination of the cytoplasm gave rise to appearance of the inclusion, which are can be pseudo-inclusion or intranuclear groups can be present in these nuclei. So this is the microscopic appearance of papillary carcinoma of the thyroid. You can see well-developed papillae. This have a fibrovascular core in them. The lining epithelial cells are multi-layered, and you can see nuclear morphology, but this is not in very clear because this is a low power view of papillary carcinoma of thyroid. If you go to higher power, you can see mitosis as well, and you can see optically clear nuclei as well. They are more clear in the next slide. You can see they are all nuclei with a sorry, the nuclear membrane has this nuclear material, but rest of the nuclei appear clear in them, or they have a ground glass appearance. They are compared with an orphan NEI. This is the picture of the orphan NEI, in which can be they are comparable to her eyes as well. Okay. So here you can appreciate them a lot better. They are ground glass in appearance and they can be called optically clear or orphan any nuclei or ground glass nuclei. This is the characteristic feature of the papillary carcinoma of the thyroid. Here you can see a much larger view of these nuclei, and this is a calcification which is called a samoma body. Calcified secretions are called samoma bodies. This is a hand drawing which can be which is there to show you the normal follicular epithelial cells and the epithelial cells which can be present in the papillary carcinoma having a ground glass appearance of nuclei. Okay, and pseudo inclusions can be present in them. So I hope the morphology, the microscopic appearance and gross appearance of papillary carcinoma is clear to you. Okay. So in the papillary carcinoma, the other thing is concentrically or calcified structures called samoma bodies. They are present within the cores of the papillae. Invasion, foci of lymphatic invasion by the tumors are present, but involvement of blood vessels is relatively uncommon. Metastasis to the cervical lymph nodes occur in half of the cases. Histological variant of papillary carcinoma is follicular variant, tall cell variant, diffuse sclerosing variant, and papillary microcarcinoma. So these can be variants. Your examiner can ask you what can be the variants of papillary carcinoma. So you should know these 4 variants on your finger points, because but there can be 12 variants as well, which are only concerning the postgraduate pathology class, not the undergraduate. Okay. So I'm not going into the details. The 4 variants which you should remember are follicular variant, tall cell variant, diffuse sclerosing variant, and papillary microcarcinomas. So this is the follicular variant. You cannot see any papillae, but you can see follicle formation with colloid in between, and you can see the characteristic owl-eyed nuclei, sorry, orphan-any-eyed nuclei. Owl-eyed nuclei are seen mostly in the Reed-Sternberg cells. Okay, so these are called ground glass appearance of the nuclei or orphan-any-eye nuclei. Here the nuclear morphology is also clear, and this is also the follicular variant of papillary carcinoma of the thyroid. The clinical course of these tumors are, they are asymptomatic thyroid tumors which cannot be distinguished clinically from adenomas. They can present as a mass. Sometimes they present as a metastasis in the cervical lymph node. Their prognosis is excellent when they are present confined to the thyroid. And prognosis depends upon the several factors, especially if there is extrathyroid extension and distant metastasis. Obviously, then prognosis is not as good as when they are confined to the thyroid. They have excellent 10-year survival rate of 95% when they are confined to the thyroid as well. The diagnosis of these tumors is by radionuclide scanning of the thyroid gland, fine needle aspiration cytology of the thyroid gland, biopsy of the resected lesion. I have told you many times what is FNAC. FNAC is taking out the cells via a syringe. It can be ultrasound guided, or it can be a blind procedure, or it can be a CT guided. In case of thyroid lesion, it can be a blind procedure because you can palpate the lesion. In the case of lymph nodes which are palpable and breast lesion which can be palpable, FNAC can be a blind procedure, but in the abdominal masses, it has to be ultrasound guided or CT guided. Okay. So I hope this is clear. Papillary carcinoma of the thyroid. Quickly, I will also do the follicular carcinoma. I'll do it again. Follicular carcinoma, they are less common as compared to papillary carcinoma of thyroid, and they are 5 to 15% of thyroid cancers, and but most frequent in the areas of dietary iodine deficiency. In those areas, follicular carcinomas are more commonly seen, which are deficiency in their iodine content. They are common in women. As I've told you already, all thyroid malignancies are more common in women as compared to men. Even thyroid non-malignant lesions like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune disease, Graves' disease, which is also an autoimmune disease, they are more common in females as compared to men. Okay. So follicular carcinoma is also more common in women than in men, 3:1 ratio. And it presents more often in older patients than to papillary carcinoma. The peak incidence can be in the older age group. Morphologically, follicular carcinoma can present as single nodules. They are well circumscribed nodules and they are encapsulated. Follicular carcinomas are always encapsulated, and they have to be differentiated from follicular adenoma on the basis of capsular invasion and invasion of a capsular blood vessel by the tumor cells. If the capsule is intact, there are no invasion is seen in the capsule, no invasion is seen in the capsular blood vessel, then they are called follicular adenomas. Because morphologically, histologically, the nuclear features are not going to be very malignant in case of follicular carcinoma as well. Follicular adenoma are benign looking nuclei, but in follicular carcinoma, they can present as having very bland or bland nuclei, similarly as same as that of follicular adenoma, but the main differentiating feature in follicular carcinoma and follicular adenoma is the invasion of the capsule by the follicular epithelial cell, especially the invasion of a blood vessel which is present within the capsule. So this is the main differentiating point. Any examiner can ask you in the viva, what is the difference between a follicular carcinoma and a follicular adenoma histologically? So this is the major difference. Okay. Sometimes widely infiltrative lesions can be seen as well. They may penetrate the capsule and infiltrate the well beyond thyroid capsule into the adjacent neck structure. So then the prognosis is going to be bad. This is the follicular carcinoma. You can see a capsule is present around there, but microscopically invasion into the capsule can be seen, and this is the rest of the gland. Okay, you can see a thick capsule present, and these are the small follicles which are leading to follicular carcinoma. I'm just going to finish in 1 minute. Okay. So grossly on cut section, these are gray to tan to pink masses, which can be translucent due to large colloid follicles, or they are composed of microscopically, they are composed of uniform cells forming regular follicles containing colloid. In less differentiated tumors, nests and sheets of cells are seen, which can be not forming follicles as well. Sometimes there is a Hürthle cell chain in them because the cells become very large and eosinophilic and granular. Capsular invasion and invasion of the blood vessel within the capsule is the most distinguishing feature between the follicular carcinoma and follicular adenoma, as I've already explained you. Widely invasive follicular carcinomas have solid or trabecular appearance as well. So here again you can see nodules, and this is the capsule which is invaded by these cells. Okay, here you can see a whole group of follicles are present within the vascular blood vessel which is present within the capsule. So this is the follicular thyroid cancer with angio invasion. Okay, so clinical course, this I've already done. So the time is finished. I'm going to talk to you on Monday. Thank you. Sorry, it's okay.